Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So far. Fast to freedom. Dance tonight together. Here everyone is singing. You can't know what your part. Copy from what the show.
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 11th, 2023. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcast. You can set up a one-time a reoccurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts, it's your old pal, Mike Spears. Joining alongside, as always, Case Lowe. And Case, we have a lot to get to this week, but how are you? Did you have a nice weekend? Because I managed to throw out my back.
You're the second person I know that threw out their back. Friend of the show, Sean Sloan, also crippled with back pain right now. I forget about me. How are you doing?
You know, the reason why I immediately threw that out there is because I did it in a dumb way. So I thought you'd get some enjoyment of it. I think I pulled my back setting off fireworks at a ranch last week.
Well, that is incredibly Texas of you.
Dude, I know at one time 2019 was Western wear for Mike Spears, but I've been thriving. You know, I just get out of the city and just stare into the nothingness and set things on fire. But somehow during that, like, I think it was like moving all the things around. I just felt like a twinge in my back, and ever since then, I will be like shifting my weight a lot on this show. If I could find a way to podcast laying down, that would be like the optimum position. I know that that's not, as a sportsman, what I should do, but there's a part of me that's like, can I just like attach this microphone to a bedside table and I can just record that way? But I'm going to get through it. We have a lot of really fun stuff to talk about this week. But how are you doing, buddy?
If I could find a way to podcast and lay down, I would also podcast and lay down. I remember, so when we record with Jay, we record really early in the morning because the time difference. And the show we did before World last year, that super depressing episode, about halfway through, I was like, I'm sitting next to my bed. I could just go lay in this. But I resisted. I did not do that.
I had a setup in my Airbnb that I was in recline just because of space reasons. It's the only way. I found a TV tray with my boom mic, and I was able to get it going that way. Let me tell you this. If we can figure it out, Case, we're never going back. We're never going back. And it's going to be something that for all the video podcasts, they're going to find a way to put a camera above them in bed because it's going to change the industry.
I so desperately want to change the setup that I have, but I'm in this apartment for another year. There's no reason to do it. Financially, it doesn't make sense for me to do it. I could, I could see us one day. I'll throw this out here. Not now, not in the next calendar year, but Mike, I could see this becoming a video podcast one day. Would that surprise? Are you strictly anti-video?
Oh no, I am not anti-video whatsoever. I actually did a video podcast last week, and
That's
it's
right.
something that
You have a stream. You have a stream. I feel bad. It's on Wednesday afternoons. That's like the busiest section of my week. So I'll always see after the fact, like Mike Spears was talking about this, and this. I'm like, oh well, that sounded great. I would have liked to have been able to do that, but I was stuck in a meeting.
Yeah, that's why I do a podcast form of that, just because I pick the time that's convenient for me and not anyone else.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon is the hardest sell for me. That's where there's no wiggle room in my schedule. And I was like, oh, Mike's talking about something cool. I'd like to hear that. And then I'd never get around to it.
Yeah, no, but I actually had a long conversation with someone. I think that video, it's something that, like, we look at the numbers, and not to go completely pre-pro during the show, but you look at the numbers and how things go, and I just think that there's an end game that YouTube with video podcasting is just going to absorb everything, like more so than Spotify. It's the killer app, and that people are now just willing to attach, like, do webcams. And I mean, lighting for video podcasts is stupidly easy nowadays and not that expensive, that I just think that the industry probably within 5 years is going to be almost exclusively video based.
It seemed like COVID really ignited that, right? Where I don't feel like video podcasts weren't really a thing in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, like, the biggest ones would have been Rogan. And Rogan, that was more very much like a studio filmed one, like how, for people who are old enough to remember, like how, like, Howard Stern was taped when it was on E. It was not like a two-shot, as you would say in production. It was a studio shot. So it was something that was really accelerated. I think really that's just kind of a side effect of COVID and Zoom calls, I think, is what's really led to that.
It's interesting. Well, one day we'll have video. One day I'll have a bit of a more aesthetically pleasing setup behind me than currently, as I look behind the white walls I have with some framed Smiths records and some framed Have Heart records behind me. One day I'll have a bit of a Dragon Gate theme going on, and then we can flip on the cameras.
I think I am going to finally frame my programs and shoe pros. I think I'm doing it.
Yeah, that'd be a good project for me. What I want is, and it's a shame because we obviously Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network, Rich and Joe, strictly anti-video for their show. I want to be able to do this show in, like, Colin Cowherd's studio, where he has the giant desk.
That wall, that video wall?
Yeah. Where he basically built Trump's wall just in front of his sidekick. Like, that person's on the ground in a recliner, basically, and Colin Cowherd's 10 feet in the air on a super desk.
It's something that, like, the one I'm obsessed with, and I know you're going to roll your eyes a little bit about this case, is there's a YouTube channel, Kind of Fundy, that has really taken off and has, like, a pretty strong production arm, that they have, like, a full-on LED studio. Like, the floors are LED, the walls are LED, so they're able to kind of compartmentalize and have the desk right there. And I'm like, oh, the magic we can make with this. Just imagine the Don Fuji modeling futon photos I could put up on that man.
You know, I love what I do for a living, but I would so much rather be hit by a bus so I could just get some insurance money and talk about Dragon Gate with you in a fancy podcast studio all day long.
With Don Fuji looking down on us, but that's not the world we live in. Case, it's been King of Gate season. We had the kickoff here. We are used to in previous years a nice little break after Kobe World, maybe a week or two. Maybe we can get to the buffet. Not the case now. Not the case in 2023. 4 shows this week. A lot to get into, and one thing we're going to do with this episode, just first and foremost, just because of how King of Gate is, it's a lot of content, it's a lot of matches. We're going to lead off with something, speaking of Joe and Rich, that we're more than willing to spoil from them. Spoiler-free match recommendations. We have now 3 nights of King of Gate in the book, along with Booyah. So, Case, I'll hand the baton off to you. Well, what are your must-watch matches of this first week of King of Gate 2023?
So I'll go chronological here. I'll make this quick. To me, these are if you call yourself a Dragon Gate fan, you need to go out and watch these matches. This will get you caught up. There's some stuff here I won't mention that I really enjoyed, but this is the good stuff chronologically and with star ratings, starting with Mochizuki Jr., Susumu Mochizuki, and Yasushi Kanda versus Ultimo Dragon, Dragon Kid, and Don Fuji from July 7th, Korakuen Hall. I went 4 stars on that. Masaki Mochizuki versus Madoka Kakuta from that same show, 4.25 stars. Big Boss Shimizu versus Shun Skywalker from that show, 4.5 stars. July 8th, the Buyuden show, Susumu Mochizuki and Yasushi Kanda versus Masato Tanaka and Takuya Sugawara, 3.75 stars. And Masaki Mochizuki and Yamato versus Fuminari Abe and Minonori Sawa from that show, 3.5 stars. And then from Osaka, July 9th, that Sunday show, 1 match there, Naruki Doi versus Kota Minoura, 4 stars.
All right, mine a little different from K's, but there's still some really solid stuff here. I went 4 stars on Eita and versus KZ King of Gate Open first match of the tournament, and then the other 2 matches I would put up there from the 7-7 King of Gate kickoff were both Big Boss Shimizu versus Shun Skywalker and Madoka Kakuta versus Masaki Mochizuki. I had both of those at 4.25. Moving to Buyuden, I'm gonna have a lot to say about Case when we get to Buyuden. There's a lot to get to. I really kind of wish that Buyuden did not happen in the middle of King of Gate season, because I feel like we could just do an hour just talking about that. There was
real quick. I feel the same way, because I really wanted to do a written review on that show. That was my plan. And just life got in the way. I didn't have time because I was already doing the King of Gate Korakuen review. There's a lot to say about this show. It was very fun. So sorry to cut you off there. Go forth with your recommendations.
Not a problem. So Buyuden, this was not Notebook, but I feel really passionate about this one. Benkei Minorita and Punch Tominaga versus Hikari Sato Kawamura and Ito from Buyuden 0 Volume 2. Kakuta and Yoshioka versus Nohashi and Masashi. I was 4 flat on that. And then the main event opened the Twin Gate title match. I was 3.75. Moving on to Shizuoka Hamamatsu. I was 4 for Dragon Lee and Dragon Daya and Jason Lee. And then from Osaka, 8-man tag game 3K versus Natural Vibes, 4.25. And then also the main event of that show, Kota Minoura and Naruki Doi, 4.5. That's my match of the tournament so far. I adored that.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get into it. It's a match that I'm mad that happened right here, because there's better places for this match.
That's interesting. I can't wait to hear more about that.
So those are our spoiler-free match recommendations. If you have not watched the shows and wish to remain completely innocent and not know of the carnage that Dragon Gate has gone on through in the last week, you should probably pause, watch those shows, and come back to us. But Case, there's been kind of one story that has been like underlying in Dragon Gate in 2023, not always on our radar, but always in the periphery. And it really is about who has been the hidden MVPs of Dragon Gate in this 2023 case. This was your topic, so I'm going to hand this off to you now. All you have on the run sheet, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. All I had on the run sheet here for you was M3K equals MVPs, ?
I feel very strongly about this. You know, we're a little over halfway into the year. I think most reasonable people, most people that are in tune with this promotion to one degree or another, would agree that it's been a good year, not a great year for the promotion. You know, it's not going to rival 2005, 2011, 2015, take your pick. Certainly better, I think, than a 2016, or I'm sorry, not a 2016, a 2006, a 2017, a 2018. This is a middle of the road sort of year for the promotion. There's a lot of good things going on here. The unit landscape is where, even if you're locked in saying this is a good year, I like this, I like that, this has been going well, this could be better, but there's potential there. The unit landscape is the one thing that people seem to have a lot of disagreeing opinions on, because I think some people really enjoy it and some people are ready to blow it up now, and I'm sort of in the middle, where I can go down the list of Natural Vibes and Z-Brats and Gold Class and D-Courage and M3K. We'll leave Kung Fu out of this for the time being. You can look at those 5 units. I think there's tremendous attributes within all of them. I think all of those units are net positives at the very worst, which is, such an improvement over a bloated Blood Generation or Antios or a post-prime Jimmy's or an Over Generation. This is a good group of units, and I think historically we'll look back at this as a good group of units. You can make the case D-Courage is too small, Natural Vibes has run its course, Z-Brats, what's left there, Gold Class, I think we're all in agreement now that they're kind of in an interesting spot. And then there's M3K. And in a promotion with Madoka Kakuta and Yuki Yoshioka, and with Shun Skywalker and a guy like Kai, or Natural Vibes with KZ and Shimizu and Jason Lee, I feel very strongly at this point in the year that M3K has been the best unit in all of Dragon Gate. And I am routinely seeing the comment, M3K has got to break up. M3K has got to break up. Let's do Mochizuki Jr. versus Mochizuki Sr. Let's get on with it. And I have been for a year now since this unit formed. It seemed like this unit formed and people started talking about how they needed to break up. And I have always been on the side of let's slow things down. Let's see where this goes. There's plenty to go around with M3K, and that is without expecting what we have now in the current reality of Susumu Mochizuki and Yasushi Kanda having this great Twin Gate run, and Yasushi Kanda having the literal best year of his career, which I don't think anybody saw going into this calendar year. This is a phenomenal unit, and I bring this up at the top of this show. With all of these different things going on, 4 shows to talk about, it feels like as many matches as we've talked about in forever on this show. There's just a lot to get to. But this was the weekend that to me was defined by the greatness of M3K. You have the junior match in the middle of the card in Cork, and then I went 4 stars on. I want to talk in depth about that. You have the Mochizuki main event, which, shocker. Masaki Mochizuki main event of Cork and Hall. This guy delivered. He's been doing it for 25 years. If it was up to him, he'd probably do it for another 25 more. I think he's capable of doing it. You go into Osaka then, and they have this great match, the 4 of them together. And it just hit me for as good as D-Courage is, for as interesting as Vibes has been, for the high points of Z-Brats, and for the charisma that Gold Class possesses. M3K, up to this point, the unit of 2023.
And I think a lot of this is that if you take a look at what M3K was looking like in December of 2022 and what we are getting in July of 2023, we are seeing 2 different things. Like, we saw M3K at a point where it was not unforeseeable to be like, okay, we've introduced Junior, we've got it, let's get to that storyline. Like, I do see a little bit of the M3K breakup argument, but if you look at, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that, Case, what was it like when it was Junior was around versus when Junior was not around?
Well, that is the difference in a year, because if you look at where we're at this time last year, when Junior got hurt, he debuts in June, and then he immediately got banged up. So Dragon Gate had that weekend, and we've talked about this a lot. They had Fukuoka, and then they had Okinawa in the middle of June last year, and both sets of shows were terrible. And I specifically remember the Fukuoka weekend, Junior was booked, his matches were announced, and then he had to pull off the show. So he went from, oh my God, Masaki Mochizuki has a son, let's see him do the loop, to all of a sudden he's not there, and we're just retreading at that point what is basically M2K, and it was horrific. It was awful. We needed Junior in the mix. This year, not only has the father upped his game in the very few focused big matches he's had, but now you have Susumu and Kanda pulling their weight. The difference here, which I think is interesting, is not Yasushi Kanda. The difference is Susumu Mochizuki, because Mike, after the Kai match last year, tell me what Susumu did.
Well, I'm going to leave Natural Vibes, and I'm just going to wander the unaligned wasteland, I guess.
Exactly. He left Natural Vibes, and he might as well left the face of the earth as well. This was the only time in Susumu's career, the last half of 2022, where he seemed like a complete non-factor. I mean, it seemed like the gap between, if you want to rank guys on the roster, he was ranked ahead of somebody like Genki Horiguchi, but the gap wasn't that big. And this year, Susumu looks revitalized. Rey de Parejas was a giant win for he and Kanda. And not only does he look, back to his old self, but Kanda's there as well, kicking ass. This is a special unit, and I'm glad they've stayed the course here. I'm glad they haven't rushed anything. And I'm glad that Mochizuki Jr. is back, because this person, he is a special kind of pro wrestler. I feel very comfortable saying that only 1 year into his career.
And it's something with him that he returns and right back into the Don Fuji things in this tag match at Cork, and really held this match from being a complete write-off with two guys who are on the other ends of their careers, getting 5 days out from being in the middle of a steel cage. Like, it is something that, at the very least, you look at what Junior brought back and the fight that we had with him and Don Fuji in this match case. And I think from there, it really provided a lot of life in something that, Ultimo didn't tag into this thing until after the 5-minute call. Like, it was clear what this match could have been, but instead, Junior's return completely revitalized it.
I almost feel like this was a singles match between Junior and Fuji, and they just happen to have 2 seconds out there, and Kanda and Susumu, and then and Dragon Kid and Ultimo Dragon. The focus of the entire match was these two, which is why I felt comfortable going Notebook on it, which it might be a little bit of a hot take. I don't know really what other people thought of it, but to me, this is a match that was completely defined and led and dominated by these two guys that have excellent chemistry. Again, before Junior got hurt, this was a guy that I was talking about as, clearly a top 50 wrestler in the world. I felt like he and his father were the best tag team in the world. Oddly enough, now they not only rival, Goto and Yoshihashi and Aussie Open, they also rival Susumu and Kanda at this point, which who would have thought that? But Junior being back, you just see it with this guy. I don't know, where are you at him? Because I feel like ever since he debuted, he's obviously somebody you like, but we all champion our guys, and I think Junior is one of my guys. Did he jump off the screen to you in this 6-man tag the way that he did for me? Because I was utterly stunned at the interplay between he and Fuji and how charismatic Junior looked, how hard he hit Fuji, how hard he got hit by Fuji. I was enthralled by the entire thing.
Well, if you would take Junior and Fuji and make it a King of Gate match, this would have been an easy Notebook match for me.
Okay.
But for the fact that, like as you said, it really was a singles match of 2 seconds. It just was something that just like, okay, this is a great singles match. This is not a trios match whatsoever. And I know I'm splitting hairs with that. For me and Junior, I was actually yesterday kind of compile a little bit of an archive of my work in wrestling over the last few years. And I pulled up the Toryumon reunion debut last year of his. And it was something very apparent there that the specialness of who he was going to give him, maybe he wouldn't have been born on third base, but at least he was legging out that double. But it's something that he's such a unique just quantity, because of the fact that, we had the Ahashis and Strong Machine J, but their fathers were not fathers of this promotion. And I think that that's such a unique just qualifier, essentially, because like your father is one of the original leaders of this promotion, 4-time Open the Dreamgate champ, the perhaps either the number 1 or number 2 in-ring wrestler in Dragon System history, according to how you feel about Shingo Takagi on that day. There really is not like the idea of a ceiling or a floor with someone like Mochizuki Jr. just from the start, just before he even stepped in the ring. The fact that he was the son of Masaki Mochizuki was going to completely, like, you could not grade him on a scale just because of how different of a scenario it is. I don't think that I'm being too preposterous when I say this. Like, the fact that he exists changed things, and that does not even get into his in-ring stuff.
Yeah, he is an example of a Nepo baby who also just happens to have a ton of talent.
Right.
Yeah. He would be talented whether or not, and I think he would be successful whether or not his last name was Mochizuki, but he's in the right time at the right place where you have this promotion who focuses on youth, who's in the midst of a youth brigade. They've happened to lose some youth, and now you look at, last man standing, it's Junior, you go, oh my God, this guy, he's just something else. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and then really like the question I have about him is not a negative question. I'm interested in seeing what Ryota Mochizuki looks like when he's 30. I'm interested in seeing, because he's still just turned 20. So he's still it's something like from going from adolescence into adulthood is something that's very kind of unique in Dragon Gate that we can talk about. But like, he is someone that, like, imagine what happens. Like, it's not out of the conversation that he might put like another inch on and then fills out. And then who's to say that he can't exceed his dad, at least in the company like record books? I mean, he's the Nepo baby, but it's the right person to be the Nepo baby of if you're already extraordinarily talented.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're a few years away from getting Junior and Strong Machine J and Ishin leading a unit together. And then we're probably a few years away after that from those guys all leading separate units. And that becomes a three-way battle of generations of epic proportions. This is, I'm sure if it was up to Dragon Gate, this would be the guy, and he certainly seems to have the talent a year in to make him the guy. I just think, you want to compare him to the guys that just left. SB Kento had this really unique, what I always said was ace-like charisma. Early on, as in his first 5 matches, I was like, oh, this guy's Naruki Doi. And then I saw more of him, and I thought, oh no, he's Yamato. This is incredible. His charisma is really something else. And then you have Takuma Fujiwara, who didn't have all that charisma, but was this absurd wrestler. Seemingly any position that he was put in, no matter what spot on the card, no matter who he was in the ring with or who he was teaming with, he could have a great match. You kind of have that combination with Junior. And that's what scares me and intrigues me at the same time, is he has, to me, his father's charisma, which is a plus. I want to make that very clear. That is good to, at times, feel like a carbon copy of Masaki Mochizuki. And then he also has this ability to take matches, even a year into his career, and not just be a part of great matches, but be the reason that matches are great.
And I think you go one-on-one with him and SB Kento. I had to look this up right now just to see how bad they're lying. Guess what SB Kento's listed height is?
Oh, the equivalent of 5'10"?
No, they list him at 5'7", 170 centimeters. No,
I think that's a generous 2 inches.
That's a generous maybe 4 inches, man.
Yeah.
Like, because the reason why I say this is like, what's one of the big issues? Mochizuki Jr. is legit 173, so he's actually like 5'8", which matters. And
yeah, which like for Dragon Gate is actually not too bad.
Yeah, 5'8", and he carries himself like this. One of the things I think we can say about SB Kento is, even though he had the ace charisma, there's a reason that he was brought up so slowly and was getting all the other small titles, because he was 5'3", and that matters a lot.
And with Junior, and I've said this for a very long time now, I'll continue to reiterate it, I think the booking of him has been fascinating. There's a common theme within Dragon Gate discourse, and it's not that I don't think it's true. I sometimes think it's a little bit overblown, because I think Dragon Gate has their top guys, and they have their bottom feeders, and then just like any other promotion, you have guys that go up, and then they go down on the card. Junior has not really been phased out of anything interesting as long as he's been healthy. You obviously have the build to him winning the Triangle Gate belts at World last year, which was, very clear from the onset. Okay, this is what they're going to do. They delivered. I thought it was very entertaining. I really enjoyed that process. You go into Mochizuki and Mochizuki Jr. versus Ishin and Ishin Riki, which was a really delightful excursion around this time last year, this generational feud that was going on primarily in Tokyo. You have that happen into the Ishin heel turn. That sets up the last half of the year, where you have Ishin and Mochizuki Jr. and Strong Machine J all kind of throwing their ring in the hat for, hey, who's the best second-generation wrestler here? Into the start of the year, they lean really hard into the father-son tag team. I thought they were the highlight of Rey de Parejas. And then Junior got injured. And it's a shame that, yes, he was on Kobe World, but he wasn't really on Kobe World this year. That's the one thing that historically, we're going to look back at that show and it'll be a misrepresentation of 2023 because Junior didn't have a prominent role there, because he was great in the build to the show before he got hurt. He's going to be great July through December. 2023 is going to be a year that really represents growth and greatness on behalf of Mochizuki Jr. It's a real shame he didn't get that spotlight at World because of his injury.
Yeah, but it is nice to see that at least in Korakuen, he's picking up it right where he was. And even though I look at this and really with the tournament the way it is, you would have to go okay, then how are you going to get certain ways going? I would have loved to see those two actually be the King of Gate first round match. It is something that it is going to go somewhere. And I thought that could have been a little bit of added emphasis back on it. But Junior was not the only Mochizuki who had a super strong Korakuen, as none other than the Iron Man of Dragon Gate, Masaki Mochizuki, had the main event in his hometown against the Open the Dream Gate champion, Madoka Kakuta, and he is the most creative man in wrestling history. He's the only person we've known to work a stomach in a world title match and make it the entire emphasis of it. Because we should have saw coming that this match, somehow, we have a notebook match based solely around attacking Madoka Kakuta's butt.
His giant ass. And that's what this match was. And it's hard to explain. Okay, Masaki Mochizuki works this match by literally kicking the ass of the Open the Dream Gate champion. It doesn't make Mochizuki look goofy. It doesn't weaken the champion. It's not played for comedy. It is actually terrific in-ring psychology. It's amazing that we've hit that point where that is possible, and it was absolutely possible.
It's something with how this was worked in the way that just from the start, I think a lot of it is so Mochizuki basically jumps the bell and starts going at ass hunting, essentially. And I wonder how effective this match would have been if it was, they tie up and they have a couple back and forth. And then suddenly, guess what? Mochizuki is determined that he's going after the butt. I think actually him jumping and just immediately trying to kick him as hard as possible and the hip was actually what made it work out so well.
Oh, completely. It was a calculated attack. It was no different than the KZ match 5 years ago, which, by the way, that KZ match is 5 years old. Can you believe that?
It's just really wild thinking about that. And then also the idea of KZ, we're now actually approaching a point where KZ is slowly reaching the point that his career almost has as many relevant years as irrelevant years. That popped in my head while thinking about that match.
That's interesting. That's a good point. That most people listening to this probably started watching Dragon Gate when KZ already mattered. And even me, I had about a full year and a half where KZ was a total scrub before he really started to matter. That's interesting. I haven't really thought about it from that perspective.
It was something that kind of resonated in my head after our Tears conversation in Shun Skywalker versus Eita, where I was like, oh, Eita has so many years you can just write off, where Shun you really only have goofy mask year. And then think about Eita or think about KZ in this, so it was 2015 to 2023, that's 8 years. He debuted in 2006. 9 versus 8 case, but for the 25th anniversary year, we can now say KZ has been more relevant than he's been irrelevant across nearly a 20-year career.
That'll be a beautiful thing, much like the closing stretch of this match, because as we talk about, they do, a lot of ass work early on. It's what the match was. It was in-ring psychology. And then they get into this finishing stretch that is it was so shockingly hard-hitting. And, I came on this podcast last week. I told everybody to relax about Madoka Kakuta. We all wanted to say, the world title run's not going to work, doesn't have the charisma to be a champion, it's not going to be this, it's not going to be that. Everybody relax. It's going to be okay. He was, for 11 months, the most charismatic guy on the roster, the most over guy on the roster, constantly delivering big spots, small spots, everything in between. He got saddled with a very poor build to Kobe World. I get what they were doing. I understand what they were doing. It didn't land. And now all of a sudden, he has a chance to show some fire again. And he does just that against Masaki Mochizuki. And that last minute of the match, where he goes for the rolling lariat and Mochizuki hits him with a rolling lariat, Kakuta bounces up. He hits Mochizuki with a twister. Mochizuki goes for the corner kick in the corner, eats one of the most vicious lariats I've ever seen. Rolling lariat, no. Rolling lariat, no. Short range lariat, yes. That puts him away. A phenomenal closing stretch to a phenomenal match. Mike, did this shake whatever cobwebs may have been there in your mind with Madoka Kakuta as the champion? Did you ever lose faith? And if you did, are you back in?
I guess I didn't lose faith because I felt like the company let him down with that Dreamgate build. Like,
I agree.
if we talk about Kakuta versus Yoshioka at Kobe World, we have to lead off by saying what the build was, which was nothing. And did the match overcome that? No, but it still was a 4-star match. It just was not a match of the year contender. So I
think it's relevant to say it wasn't a guy who was in a spot that was too big for him. The build of the match, the steps that were there, the story that they told, which again, I can see what they're going for. Ultimately, the story didn't work and the story didn't land. And I think it was a result of the overarching idea, not of the two men involved, was they vacuumed the heat from the story. They said, these guys are friends. These guys are wrestling for respect. Nothing nefarious is going on. And that's what happened. It would be like running a wedding on a wrestling TV show and the bride and the groom kiss and then they go backstage and nothing happens. We'd be like, well, what? Wrestling logic tells us there's supposed to be something more there. And with Kakuta and Yoshioka, they were put in a position where there was nothing more there. All of a sudden, he had more with Mochizuki, and we got the same guy that we saw from August of 11, or I'm sorry, not of August from 11, of August of 2022 through May of 2023.
Yeah, so it was something that I was willing to mark that more up as a personal issue that was happening with the booking, nothing that was really his or Yoshioka's fault. So when he came in here and absolutely killed it dead with a Masaki Mochizuki match in Korakuen Hall for all that means, I was like, oh, all right, everything is as how it was basically on July 1st for me.
Yeah, no, it was really good stuff here. I went 4.25. You also went 4.25?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the common rating there. So they crushed it. This is the main event of Korakuen, which did, by the way, a number real quick talking about attendance. This show did 1,189 fans. That is like 10 fans shy of what they did for Rey de Parejas. The February kickoff show, it was roughly that same number, a little bit lower than what they did for Mochizuki versus Yoshioka in Korakuen last December. That was 1,200 fans. But nevertheless, I would call this a good house.
Yeah, I especially considering like the folks that would have traveled to Kobe and like might have been people that normally would go to Korakuen. Maybe they went to go with that for the title match with it. So it's something that, at least for me, when I like looked at that and how the Korakuen was, I was perfectly fine with that. And especially when you consider the fact that when you look at how the card was constructed going on down through the card, you really had the Reiwa 6 all over it in places where, you know, you look at the main event, you got Kakuta, you continue on down, you have Shun Skywalker, keep on going. Wow, there you have D Courage and Benkei in the highest non-tournament match. It's something that when you look at how this is going, you don't want to copy and paste from 2013, but this is you know the tried and true. Like, yes, there are new leaders, but this is the same kind of song just played by different instruments. But it is something that I think the Big Boss Shimizu versus Shun Skywalker match at Korakuen, at least in my opinion, I think I like that one maybe a shade more. I know you were higher up on it.
Yeah, I liked it more than the main event. It is everything that I have told people for years and years now that Shimizu is capable of, because we've seen it before. We saw at King of Gate 2016, this guy went to the finals against Yamato, and he was brilliant the entire tournament. And a lot of his career, unfortunately, after that was the heel turn. And the heel turn got so goofy that they had to rehab him as a comedy character. And from the comedy character went into the natural vibes. And, he's been great in vibes, especially as a tag team wrestler. He's one of the best tag team wrestlers the company's ever had. He just hasn't had the platform, really, for big singles matches. The last one was the Kai match last year for the Dreamgate belt, which I thought was terrific. And this was just another example of Shimizu reaching his full potential and Shun Skywalker being Shun Skywalker. And I'm glad that there seems to be a growing trend throughout wrestling, something you and I have harped on for years now, especially over the last year and a half since he's been a heel, that Shun Skywalker is one of the most complete wrestlers on earth. In-ring, character, charisma, everything you could want from this guy he does. And this, to me, was yet another shining Skywalker performance.
Yeah, and I was real interested in seeing how Skywalker would evolve after the cage match, because for all intents and purposes, he failed at his big objective, Strong Machine J. He wasn't on the show, but he still has his mask around, and he turned on Diamante. We'll get into Diamante in a moment, but it was interesting to me to see, like, okay, let's see what the next step is and Skywalker, and he kicks off a match of going to SSW immediately. It's like, all right, no, he's just going to be even more of a psychopath, and it will be something as we look at the remainder of the tournament. We've talked about this case. Shimizu really was the person that, when you look at the bracket and how the bracket's laid out, for him to have this kind of run. If you're not someone who's prepared for a potential Big Boss Shimizu King of Gate 2023 Dangerous Gate main event, I think it's not carved in stone yet, but with performances like this and matches like this one, they are certainly putting him on the path. They're tipping their hand, I think.
It's not carved in stone, but I've certainly got my utensils out ready to chisel some granite. I mean, this was my pick going into the tournament. I think it makes the most sense. He has a chance to run through pretty much the entire Big Six generation in this tournament, and he has the talent to do so. 4.5 stars from me on this one. I can't get over, and this is like a compliment towards both men. Skywalker goes for the big boot. This is right at the very end of the match. He goes for the bicycle kick in the corner, and Shimizu catches him, and he hits the shot put slam with Skywalker's boot still up by his shoulder like he's countered the bicycle kick. The way Shimizu does it is flawless. Go back and watch that and look at the bump that Shun Skywalker takes. This guy looks like he's falling out of a building. He launches himself into the air, and he, without hesitation, without reservation, without pause, throws himself backwards. I wish that would have been the finish solely because that bump looked absolutely marvelous. This was two professional wrestlers doing the damn thing. 4.5 stars for me, Mike.
Yeah, and just to underline this, and we'll talk about this again, when you look at the schedule for Shimizu, it was so important that he got this, like, Skywalker doing basically like a scoop shot put slam in a way, or taking that, because if you look at the calendar and how the network is set up, there is basically potential for two people to have nearly every single of their matches on the network streaming live. Big Boss Shimizu is one of them. The other person was the person he beat in this match. Everyone else, they have a tournament match off network, not Big Boss Shimizu.
It's very interesting. I hadn't noticed that. Good detective work from you, Mike.
Hey, sometimes you got to put things together. I kind of sift through the tea leaves to figure this thing out here. Hey, the other person that's really plays into their hand, Yasushi Kanda. Yasushi Kanda can go on a hell of a run this year, Case. He just has to get past Shimizu and whatever Strong Machine J shows up this weekend.
Kanda's been very good this year. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I don't know if he needs the King of Gate hot streak.
I mean, let's just overdo the Ricochet 2014. The most decorated kayfabe year in recent wrestling history. Let's just make it all about Yasushi Kanda while we're at it.
I'm not going to agree to that, but something that I think you, me, and everybody else can agree on. Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and I want to connect all of you with an opportunity to get started and to get ahead. Having multiple sportsbook accounts is the most simple way to maximize your profits, and there has never been a better time to sign up. When you visit our page, which is betstamp.app/VOW, you'll be connected to all the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you automatically receive the top offer at each one. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful sports betting. If you want to take advantage of these benefits and support the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at betstamp.app/VOW.
So we didn't get to talk about this when we were talking about the M3K versus Unaligned trios match that Junior and Fuji really had a singles match in the middle of. But there was a remarkable thing that happened in that post-match that we're just going to jump ahead and talk about now. During the post-match, a masked Diamante came out. He entered, he unmasked again. This time, Ultimo line for line translated him. Z-Brats came out. Basically, the deal is the former Diamante, Luis Meza, is going back to Mexico. He's going to really just reconnect with family. He's going to figure out what the next step is because and I'm glad that this really came across on the show. He talked about the fact that when his dad lost the Diamante mask when he was 8, his dad handed him the mask. So it's much more than just to Diamante a mask losing. This was the guy's identity. But Z-Brats wasn't happy about it, and then he immediately drop-kicked Shun Skywalker, cleared the ring, and Ultimo Dragon led the Corkin crowd in a vociferous Luis Kun chant.
I was very impressed and very moved by this entire segment. I thought it was incredibly well done. Let me ask you your thoughts on Diamante has this big moment. He seemingly has this massive babyface turn, and now he goes away for a little bit. And there's certainly a possibility that they are masking an injury and him going away. But the way this was all set up, it feels like this is a part of the plan. Do you like that, or do you think this cools him down?
I like this. I think that it is something that the company does pretty well, that they let people after like this kind of turn take a beat, and then when they come back, you get the anticipation and the surprise. I mean, think about Corkin Hall, January of last year, when Dragon Dia showed up on his skateboard with his new best friend Yuki Yoshioka behind him. There's a reason to this, and if it is also secondarily to help out an injury, then I think it kind of comes across as appropriate. Better yet, actually, I think the thing that they did here, and it was something that wasn't very obvious at Kobe World Case, but making sure that you have Ultimo linked with him, and Ultimo is translating. Hey, Ultimo, he's going to be around. At least he's doing something useful here, because I thought that you could hear the Corkin crowd as soon as like the high points of what Ultimo was saying, the crowd reacting to him. The crowd is so ready to accept Luis as this big babyface star, and they're going to be even more so whenever he comes back. It's a smart thing to do right now, especially since he was not going to be, now that at least in both of our minds it's pretty clear that this is Shimizu's King of Gate. There's no reason to have big baby face turn for Diamante and then have him lose in the quarterfinals to Kota Minoura, right? Like, it's better off clear him out. Let us like clear our palates, and you bring him back in after the tournament.
Had we done same day Kobe World audio, I had a giant monologue prepared on how Diamante wasn't going to win King of Gate and how we all need to readjust our expectations, just because I don't think the move is Diamante over Kakuta in Oda City. It just, I don't know. It's a gut thing that tells me, it's probably not what they were going to do. This whole thing becomes easier now that he's not in the tournament. And, my God, the shrieks of joy when Diamante came through the curtain mic, this is a burgeoning babyface superstar. Now, when he comes back, here's what I'm curious about. And we can fantasy book just ever so slightly here. What's his next step? Is he coming back with a unit? Is he coming back by himself? He's obviously coming for Shun Skywalker. What do you think his next move is?
Like the fact that it does seem like that Ultimo is going to be attached to him, I wonder, The problem is that you can't have an unaligned main event babyface in Dragon Gate. It just does not work. They've tried it many times, and whenever it works, it always falls flat, right? Like we've seen it with Shingo, we've seen it with Benkei. You don't want to have a major babyface, a frontline player, be unaligned unless your name is Masaki Mochizuki. It just works out that way. It's just you got to get them in a unit, and that's going to be difficult with Ultimo.
So I was talking to somebody off the air, and I think we devised an idea for Diamante. Tell me if you think this is possible, first of all, and then let me know your thoughts on it from an aesthetic standpoint. But when Diamante comes back from Mexico, he's going to have all of Z-Brats ready to fight him. That's Shun, that's Kai, that's Hyo, that's Ishin. I don't think he's coming alone. Do we see Takuma Nishikawa alongside Diamante?
I think that'd be very smart. I think that is a way to get around needing to have Ultimo. I am under the impression that Nishikawa can at least, carry that into the promos so the fan base can pick up on it.
I think we wind up with a unit that is Luis, that is Nishikawa, and this is information that you've been privy to. This is something that I know. I don't know if we've said it on this podcast, but I would be very, very surprised if Dragon Gate goes along with this initial, we'll call him Luis, babyface unit, and we don't see Hyo involved as well. For those that don't know, these guys are boys. Diamante and Hyo are attached at the hip. They've been together essentially the entire time that Diamante has been in Japan. Hyo, from my understanding, is the one that helps him navigate the country. If you look at Hyo's Twitter account, he's talked about Diamante, how could you abandon us? You were disloyal, this, that, the other thing. That has all the makings of Hyo standing up to Shun, standing up to Kai, standing up to Ishin, turning in a much needed way, turning babyface, and joining up with a guy who, by all accounts, he's very close with in real life.
Yeah, and can't you just imagine babyface Hyo with the Buff Bagwell wear? Like, there's crowd appeal, but I think that's the way you get Hyo back to being a babyface, is the fact that he's incredibly jacked and he's standing next to a Diamante. Like, it makes good sense. Like, you're still going to want to fill out that unit, but I think you have something there with Diamante, Hyo, and also Nishikawa if possible. Like, you're going to need some veterans in there. Maybe put DK.
Yeah, and then that's the thing. Then it's, okay, you want to put Dragon Kid in there. You want to put Kagetora in there. Maybe that's where Nagano lands. I wouldn't put Kato in there just for the size discrepancy. That's the one reservation I have about having Nishikawa alongside Diamante. Diamante is very tall. He looks less tall standing next to Nishikawa, who's also very tall. But you have a lot of parts you can work with there. I think that has the makings of a successful unit, at least with the idea of Diamante and Hyo and likely Nishikawa.
And I also fully recognize that my answer to a lot of Dragon Gate 2023 unit issues is put Dragon Kid in it. I fully admit that. It would have worked in Decourage.
He needs to be in a unit. I have no interest
that's what
really.
it is.
Well, yeah, I have no interest really in seeing Yamato in a unit. I don't really care about that, but Dragon Kid they're wasting away by not having him aligned with something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so, but it's something that I think that will probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows back up at Dangerous Gate. I think that gives you basically 60 days. You get through the tournament, you get through whatever that challenge is going to be, and then you could relaunch him there. And Dragon Gate's October and September are always packed, and I don't know if you can build him up that quickly for Gate of Destiny, but there's no reason to think that you can't take him to Sendai and do defense there.
Yeah, I certainly can't argue that.
As we continue with Korakuen, we kind of glossed over this. This was the highest non-tournament matchup of the show. It was as I had the wrong page there for a second, Yamato, Kagetora, and Decourage versus the complete gold class for the most part. Doi, Benkei, Kota Minoura, Minorita. Hulk was elsewhere during tournament stuff here. It was the DDT on Minorita.
Great match. Not a lot I can say about it. I went 3 3/4 on it. Just kind of one of those Dragon Gate multi-man matches that just really well done. I enjoyed the D-Courage high-end combo. Thought Gold Class was great. I have more thoughts on Gold Class later. Very good match.
Yeah, I like the fact that we were going to eventually get Doi like accepting what Gold Class is now, but I like the fact that Doi is just not playing around with Ben. He just doesn't get it. And I like the fact it's like, dude, you were here when this was all happening last year. Ben-K is this kind of guy now. So, but I think that that's going to get a big payoff with the crowd when that finally happens.
Yeah, it's a charisma overload with those two guys. I look forward to seeing what comes of that.
As we already talked about M3K versus the veterans, let's go back to King of Gate. First round action. This was Punch Tominaga versus BB Hulk, and he had Mr. First on his tights because he was always eliminated in the first round. That's not the case. The huge upset so far in the tournament, it is Punch Tominaga getting the punch clutch on BB Hulk in only 2 minutes and 24 seconds. I wouldn't call this a bracket buster per se, but we have our first round upset.
Oh, I think this is a bracket buster. I don't know anybody that thought Punch was beating BB Hulk.
But I don't think anyone had Hulk over Minoru or Doi.
That's fair. That is very fair. How do you feel about this? I'll let you go first.
I mean, Punch Tominaga aside, like with the usual caveats, much rather have had a rookie in there, much rather have Kenichiro Arai in there. Like, that's all put aside. They need to kind of have one of these matches in this tournament. There's a reason why there was both a upset and a draw in the first round. It's just booking 101, and I'm okay. That's Punch Tominaga. He's going to get utterly destroyed by Kota Minoura in a week, and it's just be like, okay, then we're back to it. Hulk doesn't lose anything with this. It's BB freaking Hulk, for God's sakes, guys. Like, this was painless.
I feel like some people were pretty upset about this, and look, I get it. I'm certainly not advocating for more Punch Tominaga in anybody's life, but this was harmless. You know, Punch got his ass kicked. He got his shit rocked in by some of those kicks, and then he won with a roll-up. He'll lose to Minoura. We'll all move on with our life. It'll be okay.
Yeah, like the only thing that could ever come out of this is that we're going to get a Punch Tominaga versus BB Hulk feud, which, hey, if that's what we're doing in 2023, that's okay. I know it's not going to come before. I know it's not going to come after an intermission anywhere, so why not? You have two guys that you're not actually doing anything with at the moment. Might as well give them something to do.
Yeah, 9 years ago, that was almost a Dreamgate program, so be thankful.
Oh, Christ. You're right. You're right. The other first round match in King of Gate 2023 from Korakuen was Eita, the 2020 King of Gate versus 2021 King of Gate KZ. KZ won with a trauma reversal in 9 minutes, but that's not the story of the match. The story of the match is the most devastating thrust kick ever done in history.
It's a super kick that would put the Young Bucks or Shawn Michaels to shame. My understanding of this, and for those that haven't seen the spot, KZ does a plancha to the floor, nobody home, lands on his feet. Eita comes back and kicks him in the face with the most devastating looking super kick of all time. I have a lot of insights from native speakers, people that live in Japan, for the Osaka show. I did not ask about this, but my understanding, and I deeply apologize if I'm wrong, but from the translated tweets I saw, is that Dragon Gate sort of had their own Tiger Driver Omega Osprey situation here, where people were a little concerned that this kick was too dangerous and that they don't need anybody dying on the floor of a Dragon Gate ring, because Eita, it looked like he literally kicked KZ's head off with this.
And with this company, you're able to kind of play that with the other injuries that have happened in the ring being so recent. Like, you don't have to go too far to find concussions, like in Dreamgate matches. So I get that. It was something to me that I usually will err on the side of the wrestlers in this kind of situation. Like,
completely. No, they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, it's and I thought it was actually really kind of tied together, like the first match of the tournament, real well. Where like the biggest thing that was said on this Korakuen show was, "Hey, the first round matches are 15 minutes long," and that was reiterated over and over. But you also had to get ready for the idea that these matches could end out of anywhere. And the way that they played up the super kick, where initially Eita was going to take the count out, he rolls him in, KZ kicks out, and then after a little bit, basically until he shakes the cobwebs through, he plays dead, essentially dead behind the eyes. And then KZ and it flashes back together, is able to land a couple of elbows, and then we have Eita going for trauma, his gory special variant, and KZ out of nowhere, like basically like with like if we're doing health bars here, with like the last pixel of health bar was able to make it into reversal, and I thought that was brilliant. I was 4 stars on it. I thought this was a really, really fun and smart way to kick off this tournament.
Yeah, 3 3/4 from me, so I'm almost right there with you. I have no desire to argue that rating because I think you're very much on the money there. It was an awesome match that just once again, Eita not fulfilling the ace role last year. Kakuta was very over on this show. Shun was very over on this show. I thought Shimizu got a great reaction. Mochizuki obviously got a great reaction. I don't think anybody got the reaction that Eita got. Is that a fair assessment?
I have stopped writing down Eita sickeningly over just because I expect it now. Yeah, it's old hat. He's the most over person on the roster, and he's there fulfilling contractual obligations.
I've been working on something that might not ever see the light of day, but next year is Dragon Gate's 25th anniversary, and there's a lot of fun stuff that I want to do for it. And I've been kicking around the idea of, some of the greatest what-if moments in Dragon Gate history and trying to butterfly effect those, which, full transparency, it's a rip from Bill Simmons' Book of Basketball. I really like that chapter. I like that sort of stuff. I've been playing around with it. And the more what-if moments I list, the more I notice that Eita's involved. And I'm almost like, do I have to do a separate list of just Eita things? Like, what
it's its own
this?
chapter. It's
unbelievable.
Chapter. I mean, I could just think off the top of my head, Case, and we've not talked about this idea whatsoever, of 3 completely different sliding door moments of Eita. 3.
Yeah. And those are drastic, major company swinging changes, let alone the 7 or 8 that he has that is like, oh, that show would be way different if this happened. Well, that unit would be completely different if this would have taken place.
No, it probably, trying to think of anyone else, I would say. The only other person I would think like most what ifs, and that's if you really try to play them through when they left, would have been Magnum. But the overall arching thing of Magnum would have been, when would the ego give out for him? Whereas Eita, there's different unique scenarios, like what happens if him and Shima were in better terms? What happens if he actually decided he wanted to be a babyface? What if he gets to run away to Mexico when he wants to run away to Mexico? Like, it's just, he's called the -- troublemaker for a reason, folks.
Yeah. I always look at Milano as the guy where I go, well, what if Milano, what if he just stays another year? What if he stays another 3? What if he stays 5? What if Milano is now office for Dragon Gate and has been here the entire time? What does all of that look like? Whereas I think Magnum, by 2006, it's like, all right, he's Tenru's friend. We got it. We heard you. But it's a thing with Eita where he's Grand Slam champion. He's won everything there is to win. He's undoubtedly a star. And we're not going to do this conversation in full here. Yeah. But yet there's something about his career that's deeply unsatisfying. I've never had a wrestler like this in my life where there's always something going on with him that I just think is absolutely fascinating, even if it's maddening.
Yeah, like the one, and we'll move back to this, that I want to ask you, because I had a similar thought process. I've been compiling all my work together and pulling up like the various Kobe World columns I've done since I've been with Voices of Wrestling, and I looked at one of the ones that I wrote before Kobe World 2017 case, when T-Hawk won King of Gate that year. And I just had one big overriding thought when I was like going through my work from 6 years ago. 2017 was Akira Tozawa's year if he stuck around.
Oh yeah. That makes sense, because that's that would have been Tozawa and Yamato, and they had big matches, but they hadn't had the big match.
Tozawa has not.
That would have made sense.
Yeah, and Tozawa, I think the only win he got was in the No Ropes match. He's never beaten him for a title, so it was going to be Tozawa's year in 2017. I'm dead convinced of that. You can't prove me wrong.
Do you know off the top of your head what Eita did on that show?
Kobe World 2017?
Yeah.
Well, that was in the peak of Overgeneration, so something very disappointing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking it up now just because I'm curious, because that's the T-Hawk Yamato match, which was built off of King of Gate 2017. The finals is T-Hawk versus Eita. That's their one singles match post tag team, and I have zero recollection of it. It obviously wasn't that good. That was the semifinal, I guess. T-Hawk versus Eita was the semifinal, and then T-Hawk versus Doi was the finals. My point stands. Not a very good match if I can't remember it, which was just a giant issue there. And boy, oh boy, 2017 Kobe World. This is the Open the Triangle Gate Championship #1 contendership match, third match on the show. Ben-K, Big R, Shimizu, and Kotoka defeat Gamma, Takahiro Yamamura, and Eita. That is what he did that year.
Early Maximum was a fun group of guys.
Maximum kicks ass. That is a unit that, I mean, look, that was my thought. More so 2018 was like, thank God Maximum exists. I mean, that was always the theme. Was I watched a bunch of undercard nonsense, I watched some heel stuff that didn't land, but Maximum was in the main event, and I went 4 stars in the main event.
Yeah, I know that this is something that's been on my mind for a long time. I know it's not much of a thing for you. The themes in the intro, I like I still like the Maximum first finger theme. Like, that theme was kicked ass. Everything about Maximum kicked ass. Let's talk about non-tournament stuff on Cork. And there was a little bit of interesting stuff here, as we had the return of Kaito Nagano teaming with Daiki Yanagiuchi versus Genki Horiguchi and Takashi Yoshida. Case, did you realize that Nagano's 1-year anniversary is fastly approaching?
Is it August?
Yeah, it's next month.
Yeah, because it was Fukuoka against Kai. That was his debut match, right?
Right, yeah. But it's something like seeing Nagano back, and the way that, like, there was a presence, though, that I missed Nagano, that I did not realize how badly I missed Nagano. I was only 3 1/4 on this tag case, but it was just Nagano, seeing how he's like kind of like changed over the year, and what has added, what hasn't worked out here. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how he goes in year 2. That was my one note here, is that, hey, Kaito Nagano is back and he's coming up on his anniversary.
I completely agree with the sentiment. I did not realize how much I missed Nagano until he showed up on this show.
And our opener for Korakuen was Z-Brats versus Natural Vibes, Kai, Hyo, and Ishin versus Jason Lee, UT, and Jackie Funky Kamei. Hyo won with his zero kick, which, as the #1 Hyo fan, this is his 5th separate finishing maneuver that he's had. None of them have stuck around very long, but it seems like this kick might do it. Ishin and Jason Lee went face-to-face, so maybe we're going to see this Brave feud continue.
Yeah, good stuff there. A fun opener. Obviously, a preview for UT and Hyo, which we'll get the King of Gate version of that over the weekend in Aichi, in UT's hometown. Fun stuff here. A good opener.
So I guess the big question here, Case, I'm looking at my notebook right now. I have 4 and then a 2, 4 and 1/4. Where do you have this as in 2023's Cork in a year? It always was something that the King of Gate kickoff Corkins were one of the stronger of the year, and it seems like even though they've moved the tournament, this has just as much of a claim as the past years.
Yeah, I would certainly say so. I think I still liked the February Corkin, that Ray Day Pareas kickoff show. I think I liked that a little bit more than this, but this to me is a show that you should not only watch start to finish. I'll make this will be my final point on Corkin. Watch this show from start to finish and skip towards the end of intermission. If you're watching the English commentary feed, I want to be sure to mention this real quick. Jay has a sit-down interview with Toshio Noshida, who, for those that don't know, he's a guy based out of Austin, Texas. He was the one that housed Yamato when Yamato had his brief U.S. excursion, and he's now the guy that when Dragon Gate wrestlers in America, and they're based out of Austin, he's still housing them. He is an integral part of Dragon System history. I've never heard him speak before, and he happened to be at Corkin, and Jay had him on mic for a few minutes there, and they had a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed that part of the show.
Yeah, some good news for me in that interview, I guess, Case. I'm gonna be making some miles.
Absolutely, as you should.
Hey, it's only 2.5 hours to Austin from Dallas-Fort Worth. You know, I can step by West Texas and go to the Czech stop. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
But that was the start of their Tokyo kind of pseudo doubleheader on the 7th as they went into the 8th as the Lek Corporation presents to us Buyoden Zero Volume 2 from Shinkiba First Reign. I was not able to like review the first Buyoden revival because that was the I was in the middle of my move at that time, but just off the top, since I can get a chance to say this before, my God, I love Buyoden. We talked for years how awesome Buyoden is, and my God, Masaki Mochizuki still has that pencil.
He still got the touch, doesn't he?
Yeah, it is something here. We had the Twin Gate title match going on here. It was just a 6-match show, very quick watch there. Actually, 2 title matches. I should correct myself, as we do have our new generation Open the Warai Gate champion, and it's someone who has been the Warai Gate champion a lot over the time. But Case, just as someone who reviewed the first one and then this one, takeaways, they've already announced the next one in October. So it looks like if maybe we can get Mr. Nagamori to do Buyoden USA at WrestleMania. That's how we're going to get Dragon Gate guys over next year.
That would be ideal. That is everything I could ever want. Is not a Dragon Gate show, not a Dragon Gate USA show. A Buyoden USA show is right at my alley if it's anything like this one.
Yeah, and really, I mean, let's just start with this opener. We have Fuminori Abe team up in this match. Mochizuki and Yamato. I'm listing my name on Abe's partner in this opener case. I apologize.
It was Sawa.
Oh yeah, it was Ipigen Minori Sawa. He's not a Bati Bati. He is a normal office worker. How dare I forget that? Yeah, it was Minori Sawa teaming with his protege Fuminori Abe versus Masaki Mochizuki and Yamato. Masaki Mochizuki and his Buko Dojo Sudo Gi Yamato, proud Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt.
Yamato is so proud of this blue belt. I would go as far to say it's cute how proud he is.
Yeah, I mean, he was like tweeting about it when he won it, saying like, "Hey, if I started this a decade ago, I'd already be a black belt. I wish I did, but for now, I'm a blue belt." So that we have our newest character evolution on these shows is BJJ enthusiast Yamato, and let me tell y'all something. BJJ enthusiast Yamato cracks me up with Minori Sawa.
This was so much fun. You know what? I don't know if this will make sense to you. I said this in the Discord. When I watched this match, it reminded me of Chikara, like really good Chikara. Does that make sense?
As someone who's been to a King of Trios, exactly. This was a night 3 of King of Trios tag match that was put together.
You had Sawa, who was in a weird costume. You had guys kicking each other really hard. You had this weird mix of like comedy but tremendous intensity. This was Chikara core.
Yeah, and the fact that it finishes on a roll-up after a overwrought fastball punch exchange.
Yeah, right on the money.
Yeah, and the fact that Sawa got like the absolute cheapest salaryman costume. So by the time like so they start with Sawa versus Yamato. They roll around for about 2 minutes. By the time that Sawa gets back to his feet, his shirt's completely shredded. His pants are tearing apart. I thought at a certain point he was going to wrestle down to like his old gear. I thought that was going to be the bit, but no, the bit was that he just was salaryman coming back to wrestling.
Yeah, no, really, really good gimmick here. Really fun opener. Everything on this show. Spoiler alert. I didn't love the Warai Gate stuff, but maybe that's just me. Everything else on this show, at some point when I talk about it, I will say, it was really fun. It was a really fun match. It's just, that's what this show was.
Outside of the Warai Gate, I didn't have anything below 3.5 stars.
I had 1 3.25, but even that I would describe as really fun.
Yeah, it probably was the exact same match that I had there for that as well. But it's something that I think that with this, like, especially with what we're seeing from Yamato this year, especially, you kind of take a step back, and I think that you're kind of getting to see a guy getting to blow off steam in a really kind of fun way. And I have thoroughly enjoyed like that with this here. But Case, we've talked enough about Yamato's new hobby. What we need to talk about is someone who is not living his best life, because we saw his best life in this 6-man tag, and his best life is being the wrestling machine at 5'1", as Hikaru Sato, Ryo Kawamura, and Takafumi Ito defeated Benka, Gold Class, Benkei, and Minorita, and punched Tominaga by referee's decision But the story here is Minorita, the goddamn wrestling machine.
I can't express enough to anybody that hasn't seen this match how over Minorita was working essentially as a shooter, and how Dragon Gate might have just stumbled into something truly great. Because when Gold Class started and Minorita went from Takumi Hayakawa to the man we now know him as, I loved the idea, but the question I brought up to you was, okay, this is such a career-defining gimmick. What does this look like after it's done? And that question in March of 2022 was somehow less complicated than it was now, with all of the turmoil and hell that Gold Class has gone through. Now that really has some weight to it. But we got a glimpse into what Takumi Hayakawa 2.0 could look like in this match. And that is a guy who will one day get the biggest pop, one of the biggest pops in Dragon Gate history, by tapping out, whether it be Shun Skywalker, whether it be Ben K, whether it be Coach Minoura, whether it be Strong Machine J, one of the biggest stars in the company, Takumi Hayakawa, will eventually tap out, and the place will come unglued like Vader versus Muto in 91. People will throw their chairs into the ring in Korakuen Hall if it happens there. This is something special.
Case, I think he might be wasting his potential in Dragon Gate, honestly.
Well, okay, so what's the alternative for him?
Find a good gym and maybe enter MMA. Like, he's that good.
Yeah, maybe but he is 5'1". I just feel like people could beat him by submission by putting him in his pocket.
There's got to be a 115-pound weight class somewhere that he could dominate.
Is he doing intergender MMA?
No, like
that's actually progress, by the way. If you don't like that, you're the problem. But go ahead.
But like, he just it was something that was very clear. It's like, oh, like, I never doubted on commentary when Jay would say like, oh yeah, no, the thing about Minorita is he knows he's undersized, so he spent all this time before wrestling mastering martial arts. Yeah, no, I believe you. I've seen it in person. It's not just martial arts. He's able to scrap and shoot against like Hikaru Sato. Like, that was the thing, that it was not just the fact that he was like showing that he could roll around and he was able to this. They made a big point of whenever he got someone onto the ground, he got on top, spun around them, and just completely was like, well, I've got you. And Shinjuku Face was just exploding each time. And you have like the nice side effect of, while this was all happening, like Benkei came out trying to do sumo stuff because he's a psychopath, and Punch Tominaga is only there to get knocked out, which he does. And you're like, what are we watching here, Kaze?
It took me about halfway through the match to realize Ben K didn't have shoes on, and my reaction was, "No, Ben K doesn't have shoes on." Huh? Okay, all right, on to the next. That's really weird. But Minorita here, you say all these things and they're absolutely accurate. He's able to, unlock this part of himself, and he's able to do it with the same charisma that he has while being Minorita, which is an extraordinarily charismatic type of person. This was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's a moment here, I got shoot hot. I got really invested in this match in a way that I don't normally, because Sato came in and kicked Minorita in the face in a way that I thought was like really dickish. In a way that actually
popped him back.
Exactly. In a way that like really upset me. And I thought, well, okay, match is going to ground to a halt. Hikaru Sato ruins another match. What a surprise. Guy's never been able to work. Now, of course, he's going to come here, ruin this match. And Minorita pops up. He keeps going. He pops him back. And now we're off to the races again. This was such great stuff.
Did you notice that Hikaru Sato was bleeding from the mouth by the end of the match? I think Minorita busted him open.
I would certainly hope so, because Sato was the least engaging part of this. And of course, that meant that at one point, he was going to hit Minorita with a raw kick to the face, because that's what he does. That's the only skill he possesses.
Yeah, but absolutely worth going out of your way for, like the rest of the show. Open the Wire Gate. We won't spend much on this. Kikutaro won by fan decision here. They basically did the classic Sakura Ichikawa Kikutaro match, but played up the fact that now they're really old. That's what happened.
Did not love this.
But Case, you know who we do love?
Who's that?
We love Musashi, as he teamed with Taru Nohashi against the Open the Dream Gate champion, Madoka Kakuta and Yuki Yoshioka. It was Nohashi going down to the Lariat of God, where Musashi was on the outside as the pin count was happening. And we don't have to question if there are guys in the Reiwa Big Six who have the dog in them, unlike other companies and their Three Musketeers and their dorks that they're elevating. Because Madoka Kakuta started talking trash during the pinfall to Musashi, and it ruled.
I think the biggest takeaway from this show is not, what we unlock with Minorita. It's not the very good, borderline great main event. It's people going, myself included, wait, who's Musashi? How do I not know this guy? Mike, I watch a lot of wrestling, and I'm very in tune with people's names and faces that aren't in WWE or NXT. I did not know who this guy was. He could wrestle in Dragon Gate tomorrow, and he would succeed in that environment. I am ready for a raid of homegrown Michinoku Pro talent, and it starts with this guy.
Yeah, so Musashi came into this match with a chip on his shoulder, and if there are two guys in the Reiwa 6 you want to wrestle with the chip on his shoulder, it's Yoshioka and Kakuta, because they like that kind of stuff. And you have the backbone of Taro Nohashi, always at the light when he shows up in a Dragon Gate ring. That's kind of, I've stopped writing that down as a note, just like how I stop writing down Eita sickeningly over. It's great to see Musashi, but really the story was how Musashi and Kakuta just started to tee off on each other. Just a prolonged chop that turned into a punch battle. And my God, how has, I'm right now on Cage Match looking at Musashi's overall career, and he has made stops in places, but he has not worked anywhere bigger than Noah in 2014 and Dragon Gate. This is a guy who's been completely... Oh, he's done some All Japan.
Yeah,
Is
no,
he
it looks
Hidden
like he's
Secret?
No.
Yeah, he's done All Japan. He did All Japan last year against Shima, of all people.
Oh, I'm going to have to track that down. That's a cool... I must have watched that. Shima Super Crazy and Tajiri versus Izagi, Musashi, and Sugi. I would have seen this.
Yeah, that's got something with that. But Musashi, I was notebook on this match, 4 stars. This is just hot fighting at its best.
Yeah, no, he was great. He's worked some Toryumon Mexico shows, which is good. Again, if he started to pop up elsewhere, and he's obviously from Iwate, so that puts him Gate of Origin would that would be kind of a hometown show for him. Let's get him back there. This is a talented guy who, if it was ever possible for a Michinoku Pro trainee to leave for Dragon Gate, this would be the guy to do it. And I think this guy could have a nice little future based off the one match I've seen of him versus D Courage.
It's something that you look at Sendai, and they used to do so much stuff with Sendai girls, because then you would always be able to bring Mako over, and that was always a local draw there. I know Michinoku Pro is kind of its... If we talk about Dragon Gate being in its own world, Michinoku Pro is its own galaxy.
Yeah, separate universe.
Why not? You already bring Taro Nohashi around, bring back Musashi with him, and then, just leave the Brahmins at home.
Very good point.
Semi-main event. This was a interesting one. Big Boss Shimizu, Mochizuki Jr., and Daiki Yanagiuchi. I guess he was traded from Korakuen to Shinkiba for this night, going against the Noah grouping of Amasa Kitamiya, Kai Fujimura, and Taishi Ozawa. It was the Big Boss press on Ozawa. I think that this was probably the low point match-wise on the show. Still 3.5 stars, though. I enjoyed it.
At the risk of sounding ignorant, I believe the Noah fans are, or at least the ones in our little bubble, are really into Kai Fujimura. I feel like that's a name that I've seen enough now that there has to be some degree of hype to it. And I agree. He and Mochizuki Jr., spoiler alert, I really enjoy Mochizuki Jr. here. Thought they stole the show. Thought they were great with one another. And that was the big highlight of this match. This is a better use of Masa Kitamiya than anything he's doing in Noah. So I hope he comes back and does another Buyuden show. But this was all about Fujimura and Junior, and I thought they were very good with one another.
You see, the interesting thing about this match, you know what was my biggest takeaway out of all of this? It wasn't about Mochizuki Jr. or Shimizu.
It's about Daiki?
Case, I didn't realize how small Daiki was until he was in the ring with some of these Noah guys.
This won't make sense, but I think you'll know what I mean. He's like long but short.
Right? Yeah. That's a I get that.
I gotta look at him again.
He's no torso. He has no torso.
Yeah, he's got crazy long legs and then nothing in the upper half.
But it's something where, like, Minorita, like, I think the fact that his size is ever present, like, you can't watch a Minorita match without engaging the conceit that Takumi Hayakawa is a very short person. Daiki kind of got away with it, and it kind of became a little bit exposed here. And interestingly enough, in the same match, you had Big Boss Shimizu, someone who I think might be a half foot shorter than Masa Kitamiya, did not feel the size difference whatsoever. Like, Shimizu's able to project up in a way that Yanagiuchi, I don't know if it's his body type, because they give him the rider gear, and I didn't think about the fact that he has long legs as the reason, but he's a small one.
Yeah, he's kind of I mean, this is a compliment, but he's kind of a weird looking guy.
Kind of a weird guy. That's why the Cork and hall attendant job works for him. You know, it's charming. It's charming.
Man of the people, blue collar.
Exactly. The man of the people, Daiki Yanagiuchi. Main event, Open at Twin Gate Championships. M3K, Susumu Mochizuki and Azushi Kanda defend against Masato Tanaka and Takuya Sugawara of 0-1. M3K make a successful defense on Candy Magic on Sugawara, coming right out of Sugawara's finish here. Probably, with the exception of Ultimo's return, I have to say that, at least for me, one of the more pleasant experiences I've had of Takuya Sugawara in the last, decade.
Yeah, Sugawara was good here. This was a match. It went, 14 minutes? Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say for the first 7, getting a little impatient. It's kind of going, okay, all right, Kanda's had a few good ones. Let's see if he can keep it up. Sugawara, always a wild card. Susumu and Tanaka, as great as they are, 2 of the 50 best wrestlers ever, they're old men at this point. Let's see what's going to happen here. Tapping my fingers, getting a little impatient. Let's see. And boy, did they turn it up in the back half of the match. This turned into everything that I wanted it to be.
Didn't you like that Sugawara broke out some Yave? That cracked me up.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, no, you did train in Mexico. You were a royal brother. Okay.
Yeah, you at one point were in a company that specializes aesthetic and physique more than anything. And now you are a fat tub of lard, but at one point you were not.
I like the fact that he still has those purple pants.
It's something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's look. This is just a complete aside. I don't know when he did it, but it must have been between the last times I see it. Congrats to Masato Tanaka, embracing the change of time. He looked a lot better with the buzzed head.
Yes.
It just got kind of sad after a while.
Yep.
But I wouldn't put this Twin Gate match up with any of the other matches that Susumu and Kanda have had this year. I would actually say this is probably one of the on the weaker end there, but still was something where Yazushi's Kanda, the thing that I think really breaks down for his 25th year being the best of his career, his selling in this match, selling Sugawara, taking all of the shots from Masato Tanaka. I'm not ready to put him in global conversation for most improved, but case that we're starting to come to a point where there can be a legitimate argument that Yasushi Kanda in his 25th year of wrestling has improved the most out of anyone in the world.
It's not an argument that I am going to make, but it is certainly an argument that I can't fight against. And I will leave it at that. You can't laugh me out of the room. I can't say, no, Mike, come on, no. It's not what I'm going to join in on. It's not what I'm going to make, but you're not entirely wrong.
Hey, maybe Kanda hasn't wrestled yet in King of Gate. Who's to say?
We'll see. We'll see this weekend.
We will. That was Booyah. They're coming back in October. I don't have the date for the October announcement. Case, do you?
Not more than October, but let me figure that out real quick. Booyah 3, the Mochizuki Produce show, that is going to be on October 5th from Shinjuku Face. October 5th is a Thursday.
Hey, Thursday's great for. I was trying to do Friday nights, great for fighting or like that, but yeah.
Well, it's Saturday. Saturday night's great for fighting.
Allegedly. That was. I don't know how to segue to this case. You had me watching a Michinoku Pro match this week, and I found time. I finished this up right before we started recording. This was from actually 2 weeks ago in Korakuen Hall. It was Hayato Junior Fujita and Masaki Mochizuki teaming up against Fuminori Abe and Ikuto Hidaka.
Here's what I'll say about this. First of all, Mike, I sent you the link. Please do me a favor. Put the link in the description to this show. Are we on board with that so more people can watch it?
Absolutely.
This was the Michinoku Pro 30th Anniversary Korakuen Show. Fujita Hayato, Masaki Mochizuki versus Fuminori Abe and Ikuto Hidaka. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. We still have one more show to talk about, and plus some Hamamatsu stuff that we'll speed through real quick. I just want to say this is the best non-Dragon Gate, non-New Japan Japanese match that I've seen this year, I think. At the very least, it's the best Japanese Indies match that will occur throughout the entire year. But as I look back at my spreadsheet here, Lindemann versus Kaito Ishida was pretty damn good. But this is on the level of that. This is a 4.5-star match for me. This was something special. It's an honor, and I realize that might sound corny, but I think it's an honor anytime we get to see Hayato in a big stakes match like this. Mochizuki is Mochizuki. We spent enough time on him. Abe could work the Dragon Gate style tomorrow and succeed, and Ikuto Hidaka is Ikuto Hidaka, and they went out there, turned back the clock in the case of Hidaka, and had just what I thought was a brilliant 4.5-star, incredibly stiff match.
Like, the wild thing about this match was it kind of existed out of time in a way, like Hidaka, it's always something that for me, like, Hidaka was someone like him and Fujita, that tag team, like, very much like when I was getting into Japanese wrestling, that tag team was like on the precipice. Like, that was like one of the big tag teams. So like, I've always had a soft spot for him, and seeing him not necessarily have that 2001 or 2002 ability, but be enough there. They're like, hey, he still got it, whatever you want to say it. And then you have like Masaki Mochizuki, who basically from 2004 on has not aged. We have Hayato, as you're saying. Like, I said in jest the Yasushi Kanda point, like, probably Hayato, just for the fact that like he is back. Like, that's deserves its own award. And then Abe is one of the more intriguing people in wrestling. I just find him fascinating. This is a match that you have like, and also the fact case that it was not like a clean 1080p version. It felt like you were watching like these guys like subjected back into a ring in 1999, and that was really kind of a cool effect that I didn't think would happen. But yeah, no, this was
it felt like a match that should be watched on Daily Motion.
Exactly. And you would think you would see like a Big Mouth Loud poster in the background.
Yeah, that's a very good way of describing it.
But yeah, worth going our way for. We'll make sure to have a link in the show notes. Let's talk about Hamamatsu Shizuoka real quick. It's on YouTube. They just had the King of Gate uploads. That's what you should expect for this month on YouTube. That way, 3 matches. The first one, Dragon Kid versus Kagetora. Dragon Kid wins with a new move, the Golgotha. This is a Cristo into basically a driver. It did not look so good here. We'll talk about it a bit more in Osaka, but it was Dragon Kid advancing on, and I was a 3 3/4. I thought this was pretty solid, but it's not going to be one that I'm going to remember at the end of the tournament.
Yeah, this interesting. This actually did not do anything for me. I like the finish. I like the new move, but as a match, this was slow and disjointed to me. I did not like this.
There was a lot of DK knee work.
Yeah, I could have done without this, but good finish.
Yeah, second match in Hamamatsu, Genki Horiguchi versus Shuji Kondo. King Kong Lariat here. This was a quick one. The way I would say this one for me, they did exactly what you expect Shuji Kondo and Genki Horiguchi to do in 2023 in a tournament.
They had me going. I thought Genki might get him with the backslide. I was very into this.
The crowd was not into Genki. I was disappointed for the backslide because that was going to be his big pop of the match, and it really wasn't there.
Kids these days, they don't know.
However, what I thought was a really strong match, I was 4 stars on it from Hamamatsu. Dragon Dia versus Jason Lee. Dragon Dia won with his Casa Dora driver here to win it in the battle of the former members of Masquerade we got going on with this case.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think you're just a tad higher on it than I was. I did not go notebook here, but it's Dragon Dia and Jason Lee. Imagine that match. It probably looks like what they did in Hamamatsu, and it was very good.
Yeah, I like this one more than their Dead or Alive match. Case, did you forget that they had a match at Dead or Alive? Because I did until I was going through this match.
I did not, but that was just because it was one of those matches where I was like, God, that was really good, and that deserved 10 more minutes. It could have been way better.
Yeah, this was kind of the version that got a little bit more time. I think I like this one a little bit. Now I'm looking, I was 4.25 on Dead or Alive. I did not like it as much as Dead or Alive, but I thought I did when I watched it. It was just like a really tight, compressed sprint. These guys, if the other two matches were kind of slow and rote, this one was basically seeing two of the premier light heavyweights in the world go at it for 14 minutes.
Yep, very enjoyable.
And then from there, the last stop this week in King of Gate, we'll talk about the brackets and how things are after we're done with this, was in Osaka. They returned to Osaka Edion number 2 for 811 people. Case pretty big show for them. And when you look at how Edion 2 is going, they've continued they've not always been the biggest show in the market, but more often than not, they've been the ones pushing it.
Wait, what was the attendance you had here?
Oh, I'm sorry, 7-Eleven. I had visual dyslexia for a second.
That's okay.
7-Eleven.
It was 7-Eleven here, which is slightly down from the most recent Osaka show they did at the end of May. That was 8:31. That was a sellout, so slightly down here. But 7-Eleven, at this stage of the Japanese wrestling economy, I would call that good, not great.
Yeah, and if you look at how the show is set up here, and one of those like kind of sneaky stories about Dragon Gate is they used to be a very Osaka dominated roster with people like Shima and others. Now there's not as many Osaka guys anymore, so I wonder how much that has to do with it, at least locally.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would like to ask somebody that at some point.
Do you want to go top down or from bottom up?
Go opening match to main event, because I don't have a ton of thoughts on this show outside of the main event. Big picture, I didn't think this was that good of a show. Korakuen smoked it. Buyuden was a ton of fun. The Hamamatsu matches were okay. Osaka, I didn't think was very good until the main event.
Yeah, I was mostly with you on that. The main event was the best match on the show for me. I like the opener though. This was Natural Vibes versus M3K, KZ Shimizu, Jason Lee and Jackie Funky Kamei versus the full M3K complement here in the opener. It was a Jackie knife on Junior to win it after a really Junior was just really going for it this time. Like he really brought it and got real mean after a low-key start.
Yeah, Jackie and Junior have really, really good chemistry.
Yeah, that's a Brave Gate match in the future. Just
very much so.
Just file that back. The first King of Gate match, this was the one that I think everyone kind of circled along with Hulk and BB Hulk as probably the one that was going to be on the lower end. Problem Dragon versus Takashi Yoshida. Takashi Yoshida won with a pineapple bomber. It was not embarrassing.
That's a very good review of it.
Match 3, we had BB Hulk and Minorita of Gold Class teaming with Ryota Tanaka versus Ultimo Dragon, Dragon Kid, and Genki Horiguchi. It was the Golgotha on Tanaka. Really solid, lot better look at DK's new finish. It looks like it's going to murder people.
Yeah, I'm a little amazed that Dragon Kid is in his mid-40s and has decided that now is the time that he's going to do this flipping submission pile driver sort of thing. I mean, this is a deadly looking move.
Yeah, something about Dragon Kid that always gets me. I don't want him to ever lose the mask, but I get the sense that he's an incredibly youthful 45-year-old man. Like, did you see him in the opening of King of Gate come out with like his new, like, I guess casual mask, and he has like the same hairstyle that you would see on Yuki Yoshioka?
Yeah, Mike, he's a fucking freak. Look at this guy. Look at what he does. He hangs from the post on the ring. He's not normal. We did this a month ago where I was like, hey, you know who we don't talk about enough, which is the lowest form of sports radio, but I had to do it with Dragon Kid. You know who we don't talk about enough? Dragon Kid. The guy is an all-time great. If he had his career in New Japan, oh my God. If we had 2 years of Dragon Kid's peak in WCW, he'd be a millionaire off of WrestleCon meet and greets alone. This is a special wrestler, and he's almost penalized for being great in Dragon Gate for as long as he has, because now he's just another great Dragon Gate wrestler, and that either means everything to people like you and I, or it means nothing to people who are too stubborn to learn.
Now, Case, I now have a new topic for your Sliding Doors article.
Okay.
Who becomes the Joshi the Joshi inspiration for this I wouldn't call it a boom, but like this revival. If
It's
it wasn't
not a
for Dragon
boom.
Kid.
It's not a boom. Hey, I've had to deal with so much fucking WWE stuff this past week. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about these SmackDown ratings being as high as they are for this bullshit, god-awful wrestling that makes me even more embarrassed to be a wrestling fan. And I have to deal with these losers at Fightful and other places doing more PR than ever before for them. We're not going to come on this podcast and talk about a Joshi boom because I will jump out the window if I have to deal if I have to deal with Roman Reigns praise in Joshi boom talk. Let's sell out Cork and Hall with one company before we start talking about a Joshi boom. That's not directed at you, Mike. That's directed at everybody else.
And
if you vote Roman Reigns in the Hall of Fame and the Observer Hall of Fame, lose my number. God damn it, I'm frustrated today. All day I've been so annoyed, and I'm sorry I had to get that in there.
No, it's all right, buddy. I'm glad you have the outlet for it.
He's a career failure. He's a failure. He's a failure. There's nothing he's done by himself that has moved business.
Quarterback.
Sami Zayn got hot. Cody Rhodes existed. And Roman Reigns was there. Fuck that. He's not an Observer Hall of Famer. And also, if your standard for Observer Hall of Fame is he was hot on TV for 6 months, do better. Do better. And I know there's going to be people that are the harshest critics, the hardest markers, I'm not going to vote for so-and-so that will vote for Roman Reigns. It's going to drive me up a wall. I'm thinking of one person specifically, and I don't even know if this person still votes in the Hall of Fame, but if they do, I guarantee they'll vote for Roman, and I guarantee they will have some atrocities left off their ballot, and it's going to drive me insane come October.
Speak from your chest, man. I'm glad you did that. The one little thing I'll say is we'll start talking about a boom when you don't have to like paper for YouTubers. Okay.
Yes. Well said. To answer your question, I don't know who would influence Joshi wrestlers. I don't ever want to think about that. I just know that Dragon Kid is very good.
All right. Let's get back to King of Gate before Case decides to.
Thank God I haven't seen an NXT clip tonight. I'm sure Zoe Travis or whoever is doing a cartwheel and getting praised for it by Denise Salcedo like she just invented modern wrestling. God damn it.
King of Gate first round match.
What did D-Courage do?
Or not to D-Courage yet.
Okay, what was this match? Yamato and Don Fuji?
Yeah, they went to a time limit draw. I know they wanted to do a time limit draw. I would not have done it with these two guys.
I'm not saying I would have done it with these two guys, but I also understand why they did it with these two guys.
Yeah.
Let me look at the bracket here real quick and just see where Yamato would have ended up. So the winner of this match would have gone on to Daya, and then the winner of that goes on to some combination of KZ, UT, and Hyo. I would have liked to have seen Hyo beat Yamato, but I understand that feels more 2021 than 2023.
Yeah, and if you do that, if you have Hyo beat Yamato, then you have Hyo in the semifinals of King of Gate, and I don't think that's a bridge well worth cross for some great brain stuff. I think it's something that with how the bracket's laid out, they have now made it so that Daya gets to have a strong run after being downcycled pretty significantly this year. He can at least,
that's probably a fair assessment.
So I think that's fair in this. I guess like I think about last year about how they had the Ishin versus Takuma Fujiwara time limit draw. And I was like, I thought that match did a lot for those two guys getting that kind of time and for that. And I would have liked to see that with a rookie, but then you'd have to redo the brackets because then you'd have to take out two people to get two rookies in and redo that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing there is that we obviously saw a payoff for both guys. It was, good investment by Dragon Gate to do all that.
Yeah, but talking about D-Courage, we got all three of them versus Shun, Hyo, and Ishin. It's a good thing that Daya might be going on that run and that they were already kind of teasing Hyo thing because he really got beat up a lot in this.
Yeah, this was an interesting match just in the sense that it felt like, okay, they're doing a lot of heat. This is a match that is moving very slow. Felt like Z-Brats was in control for a very long time, and then towards the end, things got what I would call pretty violent.
Yeah, and it's something also that it picked up. The crowd was getting really into it towards the end. And I think that it's really something that, like, with the way that Daya works, and I think really kind of alluding to, I think Hio's going to get to that match with Daya, and I think that it set it up. It's interesting for me because I feel like, yet again, not to repeat a March 2023 take, that this is a match that we've seen a lot, and they did something a little different with that here, which I liked.
I would concur.
And then we got into the back half of King of Gate, Benkei versus Kai. Benkei won with 2 spears over Kai. To advance, he will face Susumu Mochizuki in Ishikawa on the 16th.
This was good. I liked this. I feel like that's about as emotional or as strong as I can be on this. It could have been better. There's a version of this that could have been worse, but this was good.
Yeah, that's about where I would put it. I was 3.25 on it. Decent brawl. They went kind of deliberate with it, which, hey, I get with how they're doing 15 minutes. They kind of want to push a lot of these matches past that 10-minute call, but it just kind of was starting to get to me there. Like, the biggest thing there is, what the hell is Benkei's new theme music?
It hasn't struck me as anything other than just being extremely Benkei.
Yeah, so he basically, they've added a couple DJ scratches and a beat to his old Benkei theme. I thought it was going to be a full rewrite or something. He does have like a little intro to it, but it's still very weird. It actually, you know what? It fits for Benkei because Benkei is profoundly strange.
I would certainly not agree with that statement. He is profoundly strange.
Yep, and then we got to the main event, the best match of the weekend, and I'd say right now, at least for me, is my leader in the match of the tournament, Kota Minoura versus Naruki Doi. Kota Minoura gets the win against his former gold class leader with the Golden Rose Fire Thunder Driver. Ooh, we had a match. We started off the week with a match about kicking one man's ass. Case, we finished this week with the son trying to kick his dad's ass.
Yeah, I loved this, but you seem to like it even more than I did. So I will give you the floor real quick just to talk about what jumped out to you here.
So this is a match I adore. I think that you have Kota Minoura finally striking out against the guy that, if we want to ever do one-to-ones on Reiwa versus Big Six, he is kind of the Naruki Doi in that position here. So you get a little bit of that going on here. But Case, this was a tremendous 13-minute-ish match that I watched it and I was going, I wish this match was happening in 2 years and it was a Open the Dreamgate title match and Kota Minoura has to get over the hump of his former mentor, because that's what this match felt like to me. And maybe that is my own mind canon just like influencing thing, but the way that it has worked and the way that they eventually got to a point where it was Doi basically unloaded everything but the muscular bomb, and Minoura was able to kick out of everything. Some devastating jumping highs in this. Doi remains he might be my wrestler of the 2020s with how much I've really enjoyed him so far. And at least for me, I thought this was a really special match. And I wish that this match was not happening now. I wish this match was happening a couple of years from now for Minoura getting that win over his former leader.
Well, in the short term, what this did, I agree with all of those things. This was, more importantly than anything, this was a good, tough match for Minoura. Tough from the sense that it was, a 50-50 contest. But more importantly, it was tough physically. Doi didn't hold anything back. Minoura was very physical himself. And we're now in a place, after World last year, Minoura was so de-emphasized. And they've started poking their head around here and there. Well, is Minoura going to be a main eventer again? He's in the Big Six, this, that, the other thing. I'm ready. I'm back on the Minoura train. I think he's losing King of Gate in the finals to Shimizu. And I think after that, he has the green flag to go about and do his thing on the next level, on that main event stage, in the final match on the show. This was such a great way to close this show, and Minoura specifically, I thought was great here.
So I think what really kind of like where we differ on this week is you're more up on how the Mochizuki Kakuta match was worked, and I like the fact that this was kind of a match that we shouldn't be getting yet.
Yeah, and I still really like this.
Oh, it was something that like I'm completely well aboard here with you about Minoura. I think I don't have a full bracket put out, but it's Minoura versus Shimizu feels incredibly likely at this point, and it's really set up in a way that Minoura. I guess we can move on to more just overall King of Gate thoughts. Minoura has a pretty easy route other than Yoshioka coming up in Gifu. If things go chalk, it should be Yoshioka versus Minoura in the quarterfinals, and after that, that's Minoura's tough match before King of Gate finals. So just pencil that in.
But are we sure, and I know this is real hot takey, are we sure we get Minoura versus Yoshioka and they won't have Kamei this weekend that matches on the 14th in Nagoya? They won't have Kamei just roll Yoshioka up with a jackknife, put that off, and then we get Minoura versus Kamei instead.
Then Kamei has to beat DK, and I don't see them doing that twice with him. I don't think this is
all right. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think it's 2003, basically.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna get it'll be Yoshioka or Kamei against Dragon Kid. It's Minoura versus Tamanaga. Minoura will win that. We'll get the winner of Yoshioka versus Dragon Kid, and the winner of that will go to Korakuen in the semifinals, and they will wrestle some combination of Dragon Dia, UT, Hyo, or KZ.
Yeah, so probably I don't think we're getting 2020 again with Hyo, especially the fact that it's in Nagoya. Let UT get that one win. You don't really do anything with him outside of that. He can lose.
They've been pushing that UT needs a win. UT hasn't really had a win since he returned from injury.
Right. So I feel like it's safe to say that it's going to be UT over Hyo, especially with Hyo, we both think is going to be faced by this time next year. UT and KZ coming up, that would set that up in Ishikawa. KZ's like in this place now where you can't really, I don't feel confident putting KZ too far with at least with how this bracket's set up, but there's like, he should be considered a favorite in his quadrant, even though Dia is going to enter whatever match happens in that quarterfinals as a fresh person getting the bye because of Yamato and Don Fuji going to a draw.
Yeah, I am very much of the belief for KZ to really do anything substantial, he's going to have to go through some changes. The benefit you have here is if you want to put Minoura in the finals, the King of Gate 2021 finals was KZ over Minoura. I think you could run that back here and have Minoura win. That's the only reason I would suggest having KZ in the semifinals over Dragon Dia.
I just had a sudden realization, Case. We shouldn't be thinking about Minoura this year.
Okay.
Because I think he will go to the finals here. He was in the finals in 2022. He was in the finals in 2021. That means 24.
Yeah. Yep. That seems to be the timeline.
Yeah. So we've kind of looked at that top half of the quadrant. We'll have time next week really to narrow down as the field grows even more tight. Let's take a look at the bottom half of the bracket. We've already talked about UT and Hyo and Yuki Yoshioka and Jackie Funky Kamei are on Nagoya. We have two other first round matchups in Nagoya. Yasushi Kanda versus Strong Machine J. That match is still on as of time of recording, as well as Ishin versus Minorita. I want to tackle Ishin and Minorita first, Case. With Ishin being Brave Gate champion, Minorita being the second previous one to him here, what's your mind about a Minorita upset?
I think they go with Minorita simply to avoid doing Kakuta versus Ishin, Dreamgate versus Bravegate.
Kakuta versus... So you would say that Shuji Kondo, who would face the winner of Ishin versus Minorita, we should just already say who wins Ishin versus Minorita is getting the quarters.
I think Kondo would beat Minorita. I think Ishin would beat Kondo.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be a big stamp on Ishin's shoulders, that being the Brave Division power fighter, if he's able to take out the original power fighter.
Yes, very much so.
And then that leads us with the last first round match, Kanda versus Strong Machine J. It's something where you look at Strong Machine J. I'm just going to lay this out for you, Kay, so you feel free to push back on this. The schedule right now is that they're going to go 4 days in a row: Nagoya, Kyoto, Ishikawa, and Saitama. Strong Machine J's schedule would be Kanda on the 14th in Nagoya. The next day in Kyoto. Kyoto is a live stream. It would be against Big Boss Shimizu. I'm just going to put this out here. I think Strong Machine J, they get him to beat Kanda somehow, and then he's going to be beaten by Shimizu and will go away for repairs.
I think that's what they're going to do here.
Yeah, so that leads Shimizu into the quarters, facing the winner of Benkei and Susumu Mochizuki. That's happening in Ishikawa. Are we getting too cute with Reiwa 6? Big Boss Shimizu's big fight climb through people that he feels like he's better of. Like, are we counting out Susumu Mochizuki in this match against Benkei?
I just think there's so much more value for the storyline of Shimizu beating his former tag team partner in Benkei than beating his former tag team partner in Susumu Mochizuki. Big Ben colliding and Shimizu getting a win is a huge win for Benkei.
And that match will be televised.
Yeah, that's in Kobe.
Yep, that match is in Kobe. They kind of a wild way of doing their TV formatting this year. They have 2 Kobe quarterfinal matchups. Neither of the other ones in Yamaguchi or Gifu are on the stream. You would think that maybe you do one from one top half, one from the other. That's not the case with that. That leaves us this
here's how I would phrase this. I think they're getting too cute if Shimizu doesn't run through the Reiwa 6.
Right. Like the only other story is that in his third attempt, Kota Minoura puts down someone else across from him in King of Gate, and that's completely contrary to any other story.
Yeah.
So that's at least what, like, streaming wise. There's one last match that will happen this week, and this is a second round match. You've already indicated that you think the Open Dream Gate champion Madoka Kakuta will advance on past Takashi Yoshida. Yeah, it's something where Yoshida is on his cycle. When you're going up against the Dreamgate champs, if this was 10 years ago, yeah, Yoshida wins and gets a title match. I just don't see that being the reality we're in anymore.
No, I think there's a 0% chance of that.
Yep, and I'm with you on that. Just to run through this one more time, just at least the matches before the next time we record. They have 4 shows that are coming up. Nagoya on the 14th, Kyoto on the 15th, Ishikawa on the 16th, Saitama on the 17th. Nagoya, Ishikawa, and Saitama, those 3, they will have the digests up on YouTube. Kyoto, of course, like all Kyoto shows, will be on the Dragon Gate network. Those matches, again, for Nagoya, finishing out the first round, UT versus Hyo, Yoshioka versus Kamei, Kanda versus Jay, and Ishin versus Minorita. The match that we have in Kyoto will be Big Boss Shimizu versus the winner of Yasushi Kanda and Strong Machine J. Matches we have in Ishikawa are KZ versus the winner of UT and Hyo, as well as Dragon Kid versus the winner of Yoshioka and Kamei, as well as the third match, Benkei versus Susumu Mochizuki. And then the last 2 matches that we have for King of Gate coming up this week from Saitama, Punch Tominaga versus Kota Minoura, and then Shuji Kondo versus the winner of Ishin and Minorita. Case, by the time we will talk, we will have the quarterfinals of King of Gate figured out.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. And do you have anything else you want to add on for this week?
I do not.
So that's going to do it for this week on Open the Voice Gate. Thanks for everyone for listening. Just a quick little aside. Special thanks to everyone who has been with us for our Kobe World coverage. Without getting too navel gazy here, it was, at least by my recollection, our most downloaded time that we've ever had on Open the Voice Gate. So thanks for everyone for coming to listen to our coverage, read our coverage on Voices of Wrestling.
And tell more people to listen to it. We can only grow from here.
Yeah, no, we can only grow. It's foreseeable. It's foreseeable that this little podcast speaking about a promotion in not its native language, that's not even the biggest promotion in its country, can maybe grow even more. But thanks for everyone to do that, you can follow us on Twitter at OpenVoiceGate. Case is at _ in your case. I'm at Fujihaya. Case, should we bother with Blue Sky or Threads?
No.
Yep,
No.
so-
No.
No.
Threads, jury's still out on, but no. Blue Sky, no. We're not doing that.
All right, so you're just going to catch us on Twitter at OpenVoiceGate. Again, cases at _ in your case. I'm at Fujihaya. Thanks for listening to Open the Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next week to talk about the Elite 8 and King of Gate 2023. Take care, everyone.
Hi, my name is Tyler Fornes, and I am the co-host of The Good, the Bad, and the Hunky here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Every week, my co-host Fred Moreland and I discuss all the happenings of All Elite Wrestling and everything going on in the universe of Tony Khan. We talk about Dynamite, we talk about Rampage, and we will talk about Collision when the time comes as well, along with all the appearances outside of AEW from all the best talents in All Elite Wrestling. This is one of the more cohesive wrestling companies in the entire world, and we discuss every intricacy about it, including the unique booking of Tony Khan that is both a huge positive and a major detriment. Check us out every single Thursday here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. We are a Spanish-speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Nos vemos por ahí.